I love that you brought out the point of, can I have a beer with them? Because that's been something that we've been circulating here in the newsroom and with other experts, is that is a key factor to Iowans when they're considering who they're going to vote for, who's relatable. And when I reflect on 2016 specifically, and going back to the conversation about women in politics, one of Hillary Clinton's big kind of faults to a general standard was that a lot of people felt like they couldn't have a beer with her, maybe. And so we're talking about this fine line for women. And how does that maybe play a role when they come to Iowa, in that can I have a beer with them standard that maybe caters to men?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And there were even I'm remembering some video of Hillary Clinton literally having beers with folks in Iowa as part of a campaign event, and it was, it's criticized by some as awkward and unnatural and not authentic and all of those things. So it's certainly a challenge in that kind of traditional masculine space of let's go have a beer sort of, after work thing that guys do. Maybe it's go have a glass of wine. That's the more feminine version. But I think, the big thing is that women candidates and any candidates, but the standards, as we talked about, are a little different for women, need to figure out how to relate to the voters. And so, one of the things that Hillary Clinton did was talking about being a grandma, right? And while that plays into kind of that traditional notions of being feminine and a caretaker, she was also criticized for not being enough of those things. So it was a way to soften her image, while also being relatable, right, to people who were going to go caucus who were grandmas or maybe wanted to be grandmas soon, and that builds that sense of relationship. And you might see it in other ways as well. Talking about, one of the things that's cool about Iowa, people stop at random diners, right, and talk about food. And this is something that I like, that you like, and we could sit around and talk about. Gives a lot of opportunity for women and men candidates to find something besides maybe having a beer. But the idea is it's someone you want to have a sit and chat with, which is that they're relaxed. They don't seem too polished or too perfect, and can just be someone that's relatable. But again, that is a harder standard for women to reach, because if they're too much that way, they're seen as not a serious enough candidate or leader. But hopefully, as we've seen more women in Iowa in leadership positions, that will be less of a barrier going forward.
Absolutely. And throughout this conversation, we've had a lot of points of you explaining there's a fine line for women or for candidates, right? There's a fine line in how they present themselves, but also there's a fine line in how any candidate presents themselves on social media. You don't want to be too light, you don't want to be too serious, and same goes for the female candidates. So where is that sweet spot for a candidate like Nikki Haley?
We never know, right? I think every candidate is always trying to figure out what the right balance of different character traits are and different policy positions. And really for them, I think it's going to come down to, doing some polling to figure out what Nikki Haley offers that is in line with what Iowa Republican caucus goers are looking for in a candidate. I think she presents the opportunity to be a moderate voice for the Republican Party. She has at various points criticized some of the folks further to the right of her, even criticizing former President Trump when he was running, but then she worked in his administration as well. So I think for her, it's really going to be focusing on her experience as a leader, and letting folks get to know a little bit about who she is in a way that maintains her kind of credibility as a leader. And I don't know what that exactly will look like. And I think the first thing is that she's going to have to stand out as someone that could be the nominee, right? We know we have President Trump running again. We know Nikki Haley. We assume that DeSantis will jump in. And then there's a long list of other folks that are potentials. And I'd say, Nikki Haley is not the most well-known candidate that might run. So she needs to do a lot of work to get that name recognition up. So I would expect to start seeing her in Iowa pretty soon, so that she can get ahead on that before other candidates are jumping into the race.